She inherited only a safe from the Arab millionaire. What was inside destroyed her family. But at that moment, at 2:32 p.m. on a sweltering Tuesday in Houston, Aaliyah Carter, 26, was just trying not to break down as the lawyer read Khalil Al-Mansour's will. The man who found her at age 3 in an overcrowded shelter in the Bronx. The man who adopted her when no one else wanted her. The man who had just died and apparently had completely forgotten her. The law office smelled of expensive leather and thinly veiled contempt. Sitting in the velvet chair in the far corner of the room, Aaliyah watched the real heirs. Khalil's 3 biological children, all from his first marriage to a Lebanese socialite who had died decades ago. Faisal, 34, Armani suit and smug smile. Tariq, 31, Rolex watch tapping impatiently on the arm of his chair. And Nadia, 28, perfect red nails tapping on her iPhone while the lawyer spoke. My property on the coast, valued at $8 million, I leave to Faisal Al-Mansour, the lawyer's voice echoed. Faisal nodded, as if receiving something he already considered his. The classic car collection, valued at $3 million, to Tariq Al-Mansour. Tariq smiled broadly. The family jewels and shares in Al-Mansour Energy, totaling $12 million, to Nadia Al-Mansour. Nadia didn't even look up, just kept typing. Aaliyah clenched her hands in her lap, short nails digging into her palms. She wasn't expecting millions. She never had. But she was expecting something. A letter. A word. Some sign that 23 years together had meant something. The lawyer cleared his throat. And finally, to Aaliyah Carter. The entire room turned to face her. A safety deposit box located in the basement of the main residence. Contents unknown. No valuation. Silence. Then Tariq began to laugh. Not a quiet laugh, but a loud, cruel laugh that filled every corner of the office. A safe deposit box? He managed to say between laughs. She gets an empty safe while we get the empire? Faisal joined in, more restrained but equally venomous. Appropriate. His charity has finally found its place. Nadia looked up for the first time, cold eyes assessing Aaliyah from head to toe. I hope it has at least some old coins. You can sell them. The lawyer tried to continue, but the words were lost in the growing buzzing in Aaliyah's ears. 23 years. She was 23 when Khalil adopted that 3-year-old girl that no one wanted because she was too difficult, because she cried at night, because she didn't look like the other adoptable children. He taught her Arabic. He took her to Beirut on vacation. He paid for Harvard. He called her Binti, my daughter, every morning at breakfast. And now, all that remained of her in his will was a safe deposit box. Not even the contents were worth mentioning. Aaliyah stood up, her legs trembling but her back straight. May I go? Her voice came out firmer than she expected. The lawyer nodded, uncomfortable. The key is with the property manager. You can access the safe deposit box whenever you want. When she passed Nadia, the woman muttered low enough that only Aaliyah could hear. He never saw you as a real daughter. You know that, right? The words cut like glass, but Aaliyah didn't stop. She left the office, crossed the marble lobby, pushed open the revolving door into the oppressive Houston heat. Only when she reached the parking lot, alone among the gleaming cars, did she allow the tears to fall. Not tears of sadness. Tears of pure, boiling rage. She had volunteered at 3 NGOs that Khalil funded. She had graduated from Harvard with honors. She had devoted the last 4 years to caring for him during his cancer. And all she deserved was an empty safe and the laughter of people who barely showed up for his birthdays. Aaliyah wiped her face with the back of her hand, took 3 deep breaths, and made a decision. She was going to open that damn safe. Not because she expected to find anything of value, but because she deserved to know if there was any explanation. Some last words. Some reason why the man who raised her had so brutally excluded her from his legacy. What she didn't know, what none of them could have imagined as they laughed and counted their millions, was that inside that safe there were no old coins or sentimental letters. There was something that Khalil Al-Mansour had spent years meticulously hiding. Something that, when revealed, would not only change Aaliyah's fortune. It would destroy everyone else's. If you're feeling your anger rising along with hers, subscribe to the channel. Because what happens when she opens that safe will prove that underestimating someone based on how they came into your life can be the most expensive mistake a family will ever make. The Al Mansour mansion in River Oaks seemed smaller without Khalil inside it. Aaliyah parked her Honda Civic in the empty space where his Mercedes used to be, staring at the limestone house that had been her home for 23 years. The property manager, Mr. James, a 60-year-old black man who had worked for Khalil for decades, was waiting for her at the entrance. "Miss Aaliyah," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "I'm so sorry for your loss." She nodded, unable to speak without her voice breaking. James held out an old brass key, heavy and ornate. He gave me very specific instructions. He said that only you should open the safe, and that I should stay nearby in case you needed a witness. A witness to what? The question hung in the air as they made their way to the basement. They passed the kitchen where Khalil made Turkish coffee every morning, the library where he taught her Arabic on Sundays, through the hallway with photos of her growing up, her Harvard graduation, community service awards. None of the other three were in the photos on the walls. She had never noticed that before. The basement smelled of concrete and old documents. The safe was built into the back wall, behind a wine rack. James helped her push it aside, revealing the solid steel door. Aaliyah inserted the key, turned it twice to the left, once to the right. The door opened with a soft click, releasing air that smelled of old paper. Inside, 3 file boxes stacked, all labeled in Khalil's handwriting. The first, for Aaliyah. Open first. She pulled the box out and placed it on a nearby table. On top was a thick envelope with her name on it. Beneath it were organized folders: Al Mansour Holdings Incorporation, 2018 Asset Transfer, Original Will Confidential. Aaliyah opened the envelope. It was a handwritten letter dated 6 months ago. "My dear Aaliyah, if you are reading this, it means that ridiculous will has been read. I must apologize for the drama, but it was necessary. Your brothers were never mine in my heart. You always were. What they don't know is that 3 years ago I began transferring. I sold my majority stake 3 years ago as well. The beachfront property? Mortgaged, worth less than $500,000. The cars? Financed. The Al Mansour Energy shares? I sold everything 2 years ago and reinvested in a new holding company. Al Mansour Holdings. 100% in your name." Aaliyah dropped the letter, breathless. She picked up the Al Mansour Holdings Incorporation folder with trembling hands. Notarized, stamped, legal documents. Name of principal shareholder, Aaliyah Carter. Date, March 2022, 3 years ago. Total assets, $19 million in commercial real estate, stocks, stakes in startups. All hers. All from before Khalil knew he was sick. James approached her. "He told me 6 months ago. Said Faisal tried to convince him to sell the company. That Tariq had gambling debts. That Nadia planned to sue for an advance inheritance as soon as he died." Aaliyah looked at him, processing. "He always knew who they were," James continued. "And he always knew who you were." She returned to the letter. The will read today was for their eyes. For them to reveal themselves. The properties they inherited come with debts and taxes that will consume any value in less than a year. You have complete freedom over real assets, debt-free, growing in protected funds. In the other boxes are documents you need. And something special in the last one that explains why I chose you that day. The second box contained deeds to 5 commercial properties. Statements showing lucrative investments. Contracts generating passive income of $50,000 a month. All in her name for 3 years. Khalil had given nothing in death. He made sure she already had everything in life, protected from dispute. The third box was smaller, more personal. On top, a faded photo. A young black woman holding a baby. On the back, Amara, my first wife. Beirut, 1998. With our daughter. The world stopped. Aaliyah looked at the photo, at the woman's eyes, which were exactly like hers. Below, a birth certificate. Name, Aaliyah Amara Al Mansour. Parents, Khalil Al Mansour and Amara Johnson. Date, 1999. Beirut. Medical records showed that Amara died 6 months after giving birth. Khalil, devastated, temporarily placed her with Amara's sister in New York. When he returned 2 years later, the sister had died. The baby, without documents, had entered the shelter system. Khalil spent a year searching. When he finally found her, she was 3 years old and had no memory of him. He adopted her outright, erasing any official connection to give her a clean start. She wasn't adopted. She was his biological daughter all along. His final letter explained, "I was going to tell you when you turned 18, then at graduation. But you were so happy, so clearly my daughter, that I feared the truth would change something. You are my blood, Aaliyah. My only real daughter. Those 3 who laughed are children from an arranged marriage I accepted due to family pressure. They were never what you are." Aaliyah held her mother's photo, tears falling. Not from sadness, but anger at the secret, relief that it made sense, and a thirst for justice so strong it surprised her. James placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. He made me promise that when I knew everything, I would remember that revenge does not mean destruction. It means truth. Aaliyah wiped her face, took a deep breath, and looked at the 3 boxes of evidence. Then let's give them the truth. 3 days later, Aaliyah entered the law firm's conference room with a leather briefcase under her arm and James 2 steps behind her. Faisal, Tariq, and Nadia were already there, their faces showing irritation at having been summoned. Their lawyer, a plump 50-year-old man named Bergen, tapped his fingers impatiently on the mahogany table. "Ms. Carter, we hope you have a valid reason for this meeting. My clients have important business to attend to." Aaliyah placed the briefcase on the table without opening it. "I'm sure they do. I imagine they're busy trying to figure out how to pay the back taxes on the beachfront property. Or perhaps negotiating with the bank about car loans." The silence that followed was tense. Faisal leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking," Aaliyah said calmly, opening the briefcase, "about the fact that all you've inherited is a financial trap carefully constructed by our father." She began laying documents on the table. First, the deed to the beach property showing a $7 million mortgage against an $8 million appraisal. "Congratulations, Faisal. You've inherited $1 million in net worth, but with $400,000 in annual taxes and maintenance." Faisal took the paper, his face draining of color. "That can't be right." "It's absolutely right. Khalil refinanced 2 years ago. Next document for Tariq. Your classic cars. All financed. Total debt of $2 million against a value of $3 million. Minus taxes, insurance and storage, you have maybe $500,000. If you sell them all." Tariq grabbed the paper, his hands shaking. "That's a lie. He would never finance cars." "He did. And there's more." Aaliyah slid the last set to Nadia. "The Al Mansour Energy shares you inherited? He sold 60% of his stake 2 years ago. What's left is worth about $4 million, but it comes with a forced sale clause if the majority shareholder decides to liquidate. I am now the majority shareholder." Nadia stood up abruptly, her chair scraping. "You? You have nothing." Aaliyah opened another folder, removing Al Mansour Holdings Incorporation documents. "I have $19 million in liquid assets, all transferred to my name 3 years ago. 5 commercial properties generating $50,000 a month. Stakes in 7 startups that went public. And 100% control over what remains of Khalil's royal empire." She slid the papers across the center of the table. Bergen picked them up, his eyes scanning the pages. His face changed from angry to shocked to pale. "This is all notarized," he muttered. "Stamped. Legal." "Completely legal," Aaliyah confirmed. "And there's one more thing you should know. Something Khalil hid from all of you." She pulled out her birth certificate, placing it carefully on the table where everyone could see it. "I'm not adopted. I never was. I am the biological daughter of Khalil Al Mansour and his first wife, Amara Johnson. He searched for me for a year after my mother died. He found me in the foster care system and formally adopted me just to give me a fresh start without trauma." Faisal grabbed the certificate, reading and rereading it as if the words would change. "No. No, this can't be right. You were his charity, a social cause." "I was his daughter," Aaliyah said, her voice firm as steel. "The only one he really wanted. You 3 were obligations from an arranged marriage he accepted due to family pressure years after losing my mother. He told me that in the letter he left." She didn't show the letter. She didn't need to. The truth was in every document on the table. Nadia was shaking with rage. "We're going to fight this. We're going to prove that you manipulated him, that you forged documents. James stepped forward, his voice calm but authoritative. I personally witnessed the creation of Al Mansour Holdings 3 years ago. I was present when Khalil transferred every asset. I have copies of everything, filed with 3 different attorneys and the State Department of Records. Good luck contesting that. Bergen cleared his throat. Miss Carter, what exactly do you want? Aaliyah calmly gathered her documents. I want you to understand something very simple. Khalil Al Mansour didn't leave me an empty safe as some cruel joke. He left proof of who I really am. And proof of who you really are. People who only showed up when they needed money. Who tried to convince him to sell his legacy for quick profit. Who were never there in the last few months while I cleaned up chemotherapy vomit and held his hand at 3 in the morning. She leaned over the table, looking each of them in the eye. You can keep your poisoned inheritances. You can try to sell everything and pay off the debts. But know that every time you look at deeds, mortgages, and rising taxes, you will remember. He knew exactly who you were. And he made sure you proved it yourselves. Tariq tried to speak, but no sound came out. Faisal stared at the papers as if they might turn into something else if he looked at them long enough. Nadia had tears of anger in her eyes, but not of regret. Never of regret. Aaliyah picked up her briefcase and turned to leave. At the door, she paused. Oh, and about that forced sale clause on the shares? I'm going to exercise it. You have 30 days to sell back to me at market value, or I'll liquidate everything and you'll be left with nothing. Read paragraph 7. Bergen turned to the paragraph, his face turning gray. That will destroy the value of the shares. That will give me total control, Aaliyah corrected. Their choice. When the door closed behind her and James, the silence in the room was deafening. 6 months later, Aaliyah stood on the terrace of Al Mansour Holdings' new office in downtown Houston, watching the sun rise over the city. The glass and steel space occupied 2 floors of the most modern building in the financial district. Quite a difference from the dusty basement where it all began. Her phone vibrated. Message from James. The final papers have been signed. It's official now. She smiled, taking a sip of the Turkish coffee she had learned to make just like Khalil did. Faisal had sold the beachfront property for $6 million, barely covering the mortgage and back taxes. He was left with $300,000 after all was said and done. Tariq liquidated the cars in an emergency auction when the financed payments began to fall behind. He got $900,000, half of their actual value. Nadia was the last to give in, trying to hold on to the shares until the end. But when Aaliyah initiated the liquidation process and the value began to plummet, she sold in a panic for $3 million. That was $2 million less than it would have been worth if she had sold when Aaliyah first offered. In total, the 3 who had laughed in that office 6 months ago walked away with $4 million divided between them. Less than a quarter of what they thought they would inherit. Aaliyah, on the other hand, now controlled $27 million in total assets. Al Mansour Holdings had acquired 2 additional properties, invested in 3 new startups, and established a scholarship fund for young Black and Arab people in shelters. The Amara Fund, named after the mother she never knew but finally understood. The office door opened. James entered carrying a cardboard box. I found this in the last file in the storage room of the old house. I think you'll want to see it. Inside the box were photo albums Aaliyah had never seen before. Photo after photo of Khalil with Amara. Young, in love, radiant. And then, photos of Aaliyah as a baby that she didn't know existed. Khalil holding her in the hospital. Amara breastfeeding with a tired but happy smile. The 3 of them together, a complete family, before everything fell apart. In the last pages, photos of Khalil searching. Documents from private detectives. Reports from social workers. Maps of shelters marked in red pen. And finally, a photo of him on the day he found her. Aaliyah at 3 years old, looking suspiciously at the camera, holding a social worker's hand. And Khalil in the background, tears running down his face, waiting for the moment when he could hold her again. He had never given up. Not for a second. Aaliyah gently closed the album, wiping her own eyes. He carried this alone for 23 years. Because loving you meant protecting you, James said softly. Even from the truth, until you were ready. That afternoon, Aaliyah visited the cemetery for the first time since the funeral. Khalil's grave was simple, as he had requested. Gray marble stone with an inscription in Arabic and English. She placed fresh flowers on it and sat on the grass beside it. Faisal called yesterday, she said to the stone, as if Khalil could hear her. He wanted to know if I would hire him to manage one of the properties. I said no. Not out of anger, but because he needs to learn to build something on his own first. She paused, watching the clouds pass by. Tariq is working as a car salesman now. I hear he's good at it. Honest, for the first time in his life. And Nadia opened an art gallery with what was left of the money. Small but hers. The wind rustled the leaves of the nearby trees, a sound almost like a whisper. You didn't leave me an empty safe, Dad. You left me proof of love that survives death, greed, and time. You left me the truth about who I am. And you left me a choice about who I will be. She touched the stone, feeling the heat of the sun absorbed into the marble. I choose to be the daughter you raised. The one who gives opportunities, but demands they be earned. The one who builds legacies, not squanders inheritances. When Aliyah got up to leave, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. Across from Khalil's grave, separated only by a narrow path, was another grave. Amara Johnson Al-Mansour, 1978 to 1999. Beloved wife and mother. Khalil had transferred her body from New York years ago, placing her beside him for eternity. Even separated by decades, even after an arranged marriage and a complicated family, he had never forgotten his first love. Just as he never forgot the daughter they raised. That night, Aliyah returned to the office. There was a meeting with investors at 8, then dinner with directors of the Amara Fund. A full life, a clear purpose, a growing legacy. She passed the framed photo of Khalil on her desk. Not a formal business photo, but the one from the day he found her, tears on her face, pure love in her eyes. Thank you for never giving up on me, she whispered. For looking for me when I was lost. For protecting me even when it hurt. And for teaching me that true inheritance is not what you leave behind, but who you shape. Sometimes, what seems like nothing is everything. Sometimes, an empty safe holds truths that entire fortunes cannot buy. And sometimes, a daughter that the world discarded becomes exactly who she was meant to be, not in spite of her journey, but because of it. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't taking away what others have. It's proving that you always deserved more than they tried to give you.